You're listening to the Blues and Arts Hour on 103.9 WYAB, brought to you by Blue Cross Blue Shield of Mississippi and Small Town Music. And it just so happens that Small Town Music is where we are right now. I'm here with Frazier Riddell, the proprietor, and also the writer of such songs as You Can Drink Beer and Also Love Jesus and Who Will Save This World and many others that over the years we have actually played together on stages around central Mississippi. But today we're here inside the main office here at Small Town Music, which is on P Street in Canton, because Frazier has released a new album. Frazier, you don't do that too often these days, do you?
I don't, Chris. The last LP that I released was 2018, talking about love. And since then, I've done some singles, and of course, COVID hit. So, and writing has been on and off. So I might go 6 months without writing, and then I go through a good 3-month period. And but yeah, it's hard to find time for an album. But my goal is, I was working last night on a list for the next project. And Keep It Simple, Sue Lilly was possibly a single. Then I went, do I have enough songs to make it 7? Because 7 is sort of when you get beyond EP. And then somehow I ended up with 10.
Yeah, I saw a Facebook post a little while back where you said you didn't know if it was going to be 10, and then it was 10. And then I saw the next thing I knew, you had it out. And the format is a little bit different than the way you've done it before. You've done them on CDs ever since I've known you for over 20 years, 25 years or so. And now it's out on Apple Music, right?
CD? What is that? What's a CD?
It's those little things that people used to play around with a long time ago.
Okay, here's the deal, Chris, and you'll get one. I think today my hard copies are coming in. But because I am don't take this wrong, I'm a very blessed person overall. But in music, I am a poor artist when it comes to original music. So I did order 100 CDs, but it's just the cover art adapted to a CD, and they'll just be in clear sleeves. And it includes 2 extra tracks. And
a bonus.
Yes, it includes a couple of extra tracks. And so I did do some hard copies, but I did not get elaborate with it because I'm not on the road right now, and it's not real easy to sell them.
And speaking of on the road, you said you're not on the road right now. And when we met back in 1999, I think, you were doing a lot of cover gigs. That was your bag.
That was. I moved back to Mississippi in 95 from Nashville with wife and child in tow and had to do something. Small Town Music started in 1997, but I knew that it had to be more than that. So I was selling, which was difficult then, real difficult now, and teaching and gigging, which you did some of those gigs with me. But what I found was if I was going to make money, the cover gig was where it was at. So I slowly began learning songs. I mean, I remember a friend of the family on my brother's side giving me a cassette tape with 6 Jimmy Buffett songs on it, and I didn't know a single one of them. And from there on, I just started learning Beatles songs, Eagles songs. I'd known a few covers, but in Nashville, I never did cover gigs.
Yeah, you just did all original stuff?
Yes, primarily. I might throw, I think, every once in a while I throw one cover in. Like I remember doing a David Bowie cover one time. But it was original, and we weren't making money. But in Nashville, I was not wanting to do the cover gig at that time.
What brought you to Nashville? Was it that you wanted to go up there and make it in the music business like a lot of people?
Well, part of my problem in my life, Chris, I think has been I made an A in Fear of Commitment 101. And in college, and it seems like I never have gotten that feel and that confidence. But I did go to Nashville to be in music. But as I found out what it would take to be in music, there were times I just got very discouraged and saw things. The culmination being probably one time, 8 or 9 years in, having a friend that got a number 6 cut and made lots of money, tried to continue doing that and get in the business, and talking to him about it and how difficult it was, even if you had inroads at times, it was a little bit discouraging. That's why I diversified. Diversification in my life became small town music, selling equipment, teaching lessons, doing gigs. Now I'm getting towards retirement. So it may be time to go back towards the original music. Maybe I'll find more time for that.
What does it take to make money? If you were in Nashville and, you said you saw your friend have a number 6 hit, is that what it takes? Is that what it takes to actually get the checks coming?
Yes. If something charts, then you can get lots of royalty money. The last time I got a royalty check from BMI, it was $2 and something cents. Maybe it was $3 and something cents. And that was, it's kind of cool because you get to look at the statement. And part of that was streaming. Now, streaming is hard to make money with because you have to have hundreds of thousands to add up to anything. But I'd had a little blues Mississippi song that somebody had done on TikTok or somewhere, and even got some out of that. Now, if you get well known and sell songs like off of iTunes or places that are selling them for $1.99, that can add up because I think iTunes nets me 67 cents. So, if you sold 10,000 copies, that's some money. But doing that is so difficult. The web is beautiful because we can all be there, you and I and everybody else. But it is still millions that you're competing with.
Yeah, I can record something on my iPhone today and get it on Spotify or Apple, right?
Yes. I don't know how quick that happens. I go through DistroKid. Any songwriters listening, I'm trying an experiment with what's called DistroKid, and they put it out there to Spotify and iTunes and all of the companies, and they have a flat fee, and you can release all that you want. So I'm going to be motivated to do that. I was with CD Baby for years, and I'm not saying I'm quitting, but I'm started with this project, the experiment with DistroKid. And I'd heard about it before because I believe that the young man that did Rich Men West of Richmond.
Yes, Oliver Anthony.
Yes, Oliver Anthony. He would, DistroKid is the new avenue for a lot of people to get their music out there, and they take care of a lot. And so this project is my experiment, and I'm ready to start releasing more.
There is something to be said, I guess, for Oliver Anthony and the chutzpah that he had to do that, recording something basically in a very primitive way and having a number 1 hit with it, a number 1 country hit with it, I believe. And it was, as far as I know, no instrumentation added to it, save that dobro-looking thing he was playing. And that became the hit.
Yes. And that's a song. A song is, it's so hard to describe where they come from. And I watch podcasts with famous people. I've watched Sting talk about how they wrote and his guitarist, how they wrote, and many writers, famous people. And it's interesting because they all have different takes. So in a way, they're all right. But I think when it comes down to it, it's really hard to define what makes that happen.
Coming up, what makes a hit and who really cares? You're listening to the Blues and Arts Hour on 103.9 WYAB. You're listening to the Blues and Arts Hour on 103.9 WYAB. I'm Chris Davis, your host. The Blues and Arts Hour is brought to you by Blue Cross Blue Shield of Mississippi and Small Town Music. This week's guest is Frazier Riddell, proprietor of Small Town Music. and he's been talking about what makes a hit song.
I remember years ago I interviewed a guy who was in the Guess Who, the drummer, Gary Peterson, and I asked him, what is it? Why was American Woman a number one hit? And he said, well, a number one hit, for it to go number one, it has to have a really good groove. It has to be danceable. It has to have a really catchy lyric and a lot of great hooks. And I would say that Oliver Anthony probably had a couple of hooks in there, but the song was not groovy.
It's not a dance song, and neither was a lot of Bob Dylan stuff, especially the early stuff. And in Springsteen, when he got into doing
Nebraska.
more of the, I mean, so there is definitely the avenue for anything. And like listening to Sting and his now guitarist, and then separately Andy Summers being interviewed by the same interviewer, it was really enlightening to not just them, but the others I've listened to. Everybody has sort of a different take on what it takes to get a hit. And I think the one ingredient that I believe Willie Nelson may have been the one that said something about it. If I wrote a great song, it's because it was floating through the room. I was lucky enough to grab it, and then it went away. And sometimes I know that I feel that way about songs. And of course, none of them have been huge, but I still feel that way sometimes. Like I've been dry lately in writing, and the other day I just wrote a new one. Hopefully it'll make the new project. And I really don't know where it came from. 2 chords. I was just messing around with the progression, and then the song started, and then lyrics started flowing. And I did it basically in one day with a little adapting the next day. And it's like if I had not sat my iPhone down and recorded it, I might have forgotten it.
It would have flown away like a bird.
Yes. I mean, it's really strange, but I've woke up in the night and had a tune rolling through my head and, didn't get up. And then the next morning I couldn't find it again. That's really strange. Music is a language, and it's spoken in many different ways. So like with Sting and the Police, those are very musically educated people. But then you have some old blues guys that had zero education, but they had spirit, they had feel, and that's where it came from for them.
Those are very human elements that are relatable to everybody.
Yes.
And they tell a story.
Yeah.
And I think storytelling is a big part of it too. Even the songs that, and maybe not so much nowadays, because nowadays to get a number one hit, I think whether we're just discussing formula or not, I think, the sound of a number one hit now is a lot different than it used to be. And maybe storytelling is not such a big part of it. But in that golden era of pop music in the 60s and 70s, storytelling was a huge part of it. And even on into the 80s, there was always a story that was involved somewhere in that song. Even in your title, Keep It Simple, Sue Lilly, it's intriguing a little bit because you want to know who is Sue Lilly and why does she need to keep it simple?
Yeah, and that's a case where it would be very difficult to define because it's one of those, in art you have, somebody can paint a bowl of bananas and oranges.
Yep.
Or you got from there it just branches out and it gets to where it can be, you look at it and go, what in the world is that? I feel like music is the same way. And so the storytelling, definitely for the country music, it became that for sure. And with the blues, it was too, but it was very simple. The blues was different. It was a story, but it left so much to be interpreted. And also a lot of songs that become famous, just listening to this Sting interview the other day, Roxanne was recorded and some doctor had a studio that recorded on the weekends. They almost didn't release it. I mean, they didn't think Roxanne was the hit. And
yeah, I think I remember hearing that too. I don't know if it was the same interview, but there was something intriguing about about the way that ended, the whole thing ended up happening. and it ended up, I think, going up to number 20, I think.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken, which is it's a fairly moderate hit. But then the legend of Roxanne has propelled it on to, fame beyond the charts.
Yeah. And those guys, it's interesting because at that time, they were in a market where they were sort of competing with punk. I mean, they were around a punk scene.
And Roxanne was kind of reggae.
And yeah, listening to the guitarist Andy Summers about a lot of that's very interesting. But when it comes down to it, the short answer for what makes a famous song for me would be, I don't know. But there are things you can do. With Keep It Simple, Sue Lilly, this is probably, I really tried to think creative, personal feelings, and pop, and attention span. I purposely had a couple of really, short, simple songs on here, and then some that are, longer, and then did goofy things with them. I had one song I wasn't sure I liked, and I added a little bit to it, made one section more sparse, and the song fades out at the end with a baritone horn, like a baritone, boom, 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 playing a goofy, riff in the key of the song, which, of course, that instrument wasn't original to the song. But I was like, how can I end this differently? I know. I'll grab that baritone off the wall and play it.
It's like throwing in the sax at the end of Dancing in the Dark, right?
Yeah.
And now a special performance of a brand new one from Frazier Riddell.
For guitar players and other players, I think they can relate. You can. It's at times you go, okay, I can't do anything new with G, D, C, and E minor. You feel like, how many times can I play these chords, right? So when you do that, it can be tough. This is a tuning. I'm not even going to say what it is. I'll tell you, but I'm not going to tell you folks. You can find out on the next LP, because I'll probably use this. But I detuned one string, and so right now I'm just hitting the strings open. And as I did this the other night, I was going... I'll keep it short. But I never would have come up with that without detuning one string on the guitar. And I started some lyrics, but I don't, it's all still being worked on. But that is something, you just heard something that happened last night.
Coming up, more about Frazier's new album, Keep It Simple, Sue Lilly. You're listening to the Blues and Arts Hour on 103.9 WYAB. You're listening to the Blues and Arts Hour on 103.9 WYAB, brought to you by Blue Cross Blue Shield of Mississippi and Small Town Music. Today, you're hearing from Frazier Riddell, proprietor of Small Town Music. He's got a new LP called Keep It Simple, Sue Lilly.
Something you've done that a lot of people in our shared situation, being musicians who don't necessarily play out a whole lot or don't have a band, you record these things yourself, right? I mean, you actually use DAW software, which is digital audio workstation or something similar. I think in the past you used 8-track tape.
Yes, and I've used 8-track reel-to-reel. With this project, most of it is the new digital format. It ultimately, it was recorded on my 24 hard drive. There's one song on here I think it's either one or two that I transferred to a new laptop I got, trying to move into a new realm of recording and abilities to edit and such. So that's the only thing's done on something new. There's one song on here done in someone else's studio that was just an outtake in between. None of the other tracks worked. It was just, I was not prepared when I went in. Great studio here in Canton. And in this little outtake I did, and Brian King, who owns the studio, he took that and he made it into like a club song. And it was almost like that, except the club that night was just like 3 guys, a couple of musicians and the engineer. But he made it sound like it was in a club. And it's a song for songwriters. I don't know if you've heard that before, but if you hear Without a Cut, I think you're going to enjoy it.
The songs that I heard were, stuff that when we go back to the album, a particular album, I think that you recorded about 20 years ago, where you and I did some of the songs playing out. It was a really heavily guitar based, acoustic guitar, but on this album, I heard a lot of horns.
As a saxophone player, as a kid, I learned a little piano by ear from siblings, and then saxophone was my musical education. I mean, reading as a language, learning what a G note is on a music staff. So saxophone tremendously helped me when later on I got more into guitar, because even though I never learned guitar in that way, to look at music and read it, I just read chord diagram, chord names. I had the musical background to understand and communicate with other musicians. I feel like that helped me in Nashville. And it helped me just doing gigs when you have players, to be able to make a little chart or communicate with them about a song musically.
What was your musical education?
After high school, I went to Ole Miss after a year of uncertainty kind of in general business. That also is where I had my born again experience. So my real Christian faith on my own began when I was 20 years old in Oxford in 1980 or 81. Should remember that. And I felt led to do something that I enjoyed, and I always loved music. So I approached my parents about changing my major to music, and being the last child, I think they were whatever. They weren't as concerned, probably with the first child, you better do something that makes a good living.
Your time at Dollywood, I want to touch on it just a little bit here, because I don't think that a whole lot of people have done something like that around here. A lot of musicians around here, and they've played a lot of gigs in, restaurants and clubs and bars, but not a lot of people went to Dollywood and became a sound tech.
Right, and got to hug Dolly.
Now that's awesome.
Yeah, and she was not there much. Her cousins were there a lot. But that's a good example of how, that was not my goal. I moved to East Tennessee, to Sevierville, and at one point living on a ranch, at one point living literally in a trailer by the river. I went to be in a band. And the band was, the guy had some success, but at the time he was doing like Amway conventions and school things. It was really an odd, dysfunctional situation, I came to find out. And it was not real stable, and that's where Dollywood came along. And my journalism friend from Ole Miss days, Mark Stowers, I mentioned earlier, he was a little behind me in school, so he had gotten out. We lived in an apartment in Knoxville for a while, and Dollywood was seasonal. And so it was a wonderful education. And I loved that time. But in the off season, I was not hired for the off season. And it was probably longer back then. and than it is now. So we moved back to Nashville.
What kind of musical acts came through Dollywood back then? Was it mostly just bluegrass bands?
It was kind of show country and some bluegrass and some gospel. So you had, I'd say that was the main thing. Gospel, bluegrass, some country. And when I say show country, like the main stage would have these guys that, you know, were slick and polished. And it was kind of like watching an old TV show or performance on the Grand Ole Opry or Hee Haw or something.
Yeah.
The way that those would happen. And there was many relatives there that was that worked there.
But Dolly never actually came and did a show at Dollywood.
Not while I was there.
Okay.
She may have since then. I mean, she's so down to earth. Who knows? She did come to visit. And all of the employees got to take a picture with her. And I was on the, entertainment staff. So I was just helping facilitate all that went on that day. Like going to get her a Diet Coke or whatever. And at the very end of the day, I got to get up there and hug her and get a photo. So I'll always have that.
Now, a performance of a song from the LP, Keep It Simple, Sue Lilly.
I think I got the words down to this one pretty good. So you want me to just go? Sure. Oh, you still have the tape rolling? Yeah. Okay. During COVID, I had done several songs, and I put some out on Bandcamp because I wasn't really going to release this stuff, so I was just kind of throwing it out there. And Money, Money was one of the songs. But it started, I think the first word, it was First Amendment at one point, and then it was something else. But then it was sort of political, but then I just kind of turned it into a money song, and the Money, Money came. And I've done it acoustically many times, but the recording I did during COVID I didn't like. And this one that I put on that new laptop just kept the drums and I think acoustic, and redid the bass, redid the vocals. And I think I kept the saxophone, but used it more sparsely. Anyways, say I love you, money, money. Say I hate you, money, money. You talk about God on the other side. But in who you should trust, we should trust. You got nothing to hide, do you now? Money, money. You speculate gain and it flows like wine. Money, money. Speculate loss and it wilts on the vine. Money, money. If you try to take mine, there's gonna be a fight. But if someone else loses, well, that's alright, cause somebody's gotta lose anyway, right? Money, money. Sometimes it ain't so easy taking up for someone on your own team. You know what I mean? But it ain't so bad until that day that someone comes and steps on your dream. Such a beautiful dream. And if they got 1,000,000 lawyers, I suggest you tread light. Cause Lady Justice gets forgetful when money gets right. Money gets right. Money gets right. Ooh. I can buy you pleasure and temporary joy. Money, money. I can buy you a house and some big boy toys. Money, money. I can make you forget what's so close at hand. A foundation that's built upon shifting sands of money, money. Cha-ching, cha-ching. I go to church on Sunday, got a regular pew. Money, money. I can heat and cool God's good news. Money, money. But on Monday, if you try to take a piece of my pie, My Jesus reversed to an eye for an eye. Sometimes it ain't so easy to take it up for someone on your own team. You know what I mean? But it ain't so bad until that day that someone comes and steps on your dream. Such a beautiful dream. And if they got $1 million lawyers, I suggest you tread light, 'cause Lady Justice gets forgetful when the money gets right. The money gets right. Yeah. The money gets right. With It's my scatting. It's the only scatting on the LP.
Coming up, faith and songwriting, the spiritual side of things, on the Blues and Arts Hour on 103.9 WYAB. You're listening to the Blues and Arts Hour on 103.9 WYAB, brought to you by Blue Cross Blue Shield of Mississippi and Small Town Music. And a visit this week with Frazier Riddell of Small Town Music.
I really started writing for the most part after my faith experience at Ole Miss.
So, yeah, I was going to ask you about that because I think there may be 1 or 2 tracks on this new album that refer back to that faith experience. How does that influence your music now?
It influences just totally. Now, I'm still, I'm just a human being, so they're not all spiritual songs. I mean, some of them are goofy songs. You know, on Talk Love, the 2018 release, there was a lot of songs on there, and one of them was called Balloons. But, you know, that would say it's not one you'd sing at church.
Okay.
I am still a human being. The Christian salvation to me is, even though I can pinpoint a moment where mine began, I still think it's really a journey. It's the journey that's equivalent to the parable Jesus told about the seeds. You know, I often feel like I am getting tangled up in the weeds of the world by those seeds that got dropped on those different paths. Mm-hmm. And so I try to use that as a motivation to get myself untangled and keep going. Because I believe I had a moment for salvation, but I really do believe we need to see it as a journey and growing, because I'm not like Jesus.
None of us are.
I look to him as an example, but I am not that giving to the world as he was. But my faith, back to you asked about songwriting, it's in everything to some degree. And there is the last song on the digital album, not the hard copy's got the bonus tracks, is Walking with Forgiveness. And that song, I started probably well over 10 years ago.
I woke up a little hungover, drank a little too much wine. Now I'm down on my knees again, asking for a little more time. World's going to hell on a TV show as I watch the preacher pine. Now it's talking about forgiveness, and I won't mind walking with forgiveness, walking with forgiveness. When I'm walking with forgiveness, yeah, then I'm drinking your wine, and I want it, need it, gotta have it. I want it, need it. talking to my brother, told him how I feel. I asked him, is this all just in my head, or is it real? He talked about forgiveness and how he believes it's something you gotta give away before you can receive. Yeah, he was talking about forgiveness, walking with forgiveness. When I'm walking with forgiveness, yeah, then I'm drinking your wine and I want it, need it, gotta have it. I want it, need it. Drank the good wine. Now I'm down on my knees again, thanking God for a little more time. Now when I think about forgiveness, try to give it day by day. When I get to those pearly gates, I want to be able to say, I was walking with forgiveness, walking with forgiveness. When I'm walking with forgiveness, yeah, then I'm drinking your wine and I want it, need it, gotta have it.
All right, you want to tell folks real quick how they can get the album and how they can find you on the socials, the webs, and all that?
Yes, I will. My website for the store has always been smalltownmusic.com since the late 90s. And my main page there, so if you go to smalltownmusic.com, the very top are some icons. And I think the 4 icons at the top are Reverb, which is my gear, eBay, which has got some gear, not as much as Reverb. iTunes is up there. So DistroKid has put it out there to iTunes, Spotify, and many other digital formats.
Walking with
The Blues and Arts Hour is brought to you each week by Blue Cross Blue Shield of Mississippi and Small Town Music. Tune in next Friday right here on 103.9 WYAB.